Something happens. A conversation, a comment, maybe just a look. And then later, when you're alone, when it's quiet, it starts. Why did they say that? What did they mean? What should I have said? And somewhere in your chest, not even your head, your chest, there's this feeling, this low, uncomfortable weight that won't quite go away. The conversation is over, everyone else has moved on, but something in us hasn't. And the question worth asking isn't, how do I stop this? The question is, why does this happen at all? Because the answer is not what most people think. When we replay a conversation, we think we're replaying words, what they said, what we said, the tone, the pause at the end. But we're probably not replaying the conversation at all. We're replaying a feeling that hasn't been resolved yet. The brain has a built-in system for unfinished business. Psychologists call it the Zeigarnik Effect, the tendency to hold on to incomplete things far more tightly than completed ones. Waitresses in busy restaurants can remember every open order in remarkable detail, but the moment the bill is paid, the details often disappear. The brain releases what's finished. It holds on to what isn't. And the moment a conversation ends with ambiguity, a short reply, a strange tone, a silence that felt slightly too long, the brain files it as unfinished. Not over, unfinished. Here's what makes this interesting. The brain doesn't replay your biggest mistakes. It replays the ones it thinks are still unsolved, the ones where it believes if it just thinks hard enough, it can still find an answer. That's the loop. And that's why it's so hard to exit. So why does the brain treat one ambiguous comment like a problem worth losing sleep over? Imagine a coworker says, "Interesting presentation." That's it. 2 words. Was it a compliment or was it criticism? Maybe they were being sarcastic. Did they notice a mistake? I hope they didn't tell anyone afterward. 2 words, hours of replay. Here's the surprising part. Researchers discovered something unexpected. Social rejection doesn't just feel painful. Some of the same brain regions involved in physical pain become active during experiences of rejection and exclusion. In other words, the brain takes social threats much more seriously than we realize. And it makes sense, because for most of human history, social rejection wasn't just uncomfortable, it was genuinely dangerous. Being pushed out of the tribe meant losing your protection, your support, and often your best chance of survival. An exiled person had to fend for themselves in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving. Many simply didn't survive. Being pushed out wasn't embarrassing. It could be a death sentence. So the brain evolved to pay very close attention to signs of rejection, to signs that we might be excluded, to signs that we might no longer belong. And that ancient system is still running today. The coworker's comment isn't dangerous. The brain just hasn't received the memo. Deep down, it's still asking the same question it asked thousands of years ago. Am I safe? Do I still belong? But here's what most people miss. We're not just replaying what happened. We're interrogating it. A friend usually greets us warmly. They stop and chat. They ask how we're doing. But today they just say hi and keep walking. Nothing dramatic happened, yet somehow that interaction follows us for the rest of the day. Why did they say that? What did they mean? Did I do something wrong? Are they pulling away? And underneath every one of those questions is another question, a question we're not quite saying out loud. Am I okay? Do they still accept me? That's what the replay is actually searching for. Not the meaning of their words. Reassurance, a signal that we're still okay, still accepted, still part of the group. And here's the painful irony. The replay never provides it. We can't go back. We can't ask. We can't know for sure. So the brain runs the loop again, searches the same memory one more time, looks for an answer that was never stored there. It's like searching the same room over and over for something that's in a completely different room. And the people who do this most intensely, they're not always the most anxious people in the room. They're often the ones who who care the most. Some of us learned to watch people very carefully when we were young, not because we were taught to, because we had to. Maybe home was unpredictable. Maybe the people around us were hard to read. Maybe we learned early, without anyone ever saying it directly, that missing a signal had consequences. That saying the wrong thing at the wrong moment changed everything. So we started watching, reading faces before speaking, listening to tone more than words, noticing the small shift in someone's energy the moment they walked into a room. We became very good at it. The strange thing is that the habit often stays with us long after the danger is gone. And here's what's important to understand. That skill protected us. It was intelligent. It worked. But the brain doesn't abandon a survival strategy just because the environment changes. So we carry that hypervigilance into adult life, into friendships, into ordinary conversations that, by any objective measure, aren't dangerous at all. A normal interaction gets processed through a system that was originally built for something much more serious. What began as protection slowly became overanalysis. What began as awareness became a loop with no obvious exit. Not because something is broken, because the brain is still using an old map in a place that no longer requires it. Here's the final piece, and maybe the most important one. The brain doesn't just dislike uncertainty, it experiences it as a form of stress, which is why waiting for a reply can sometimes feel worse than receiving bad news. At least bad news is certain. Imagine sending a text message. Normally, they reply within minutes. An hour passes, then 2. At first, we think they're busy. Then we notice the message has been seen. Suddenly, the brain wakes up. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset? Did I miss something? The brain tries to solve it. It runs the scenario again, tests different interpretations, searches for the version that finally makes everything make sense. But here's the truth most of us arrive at. Usually, the hard way. There is no answer inside the memory. Not because we did something wrong, but because human communication is genuinely imprecise. People are distracted. People are tired. People say interesting when they mean I'm late for a meeting. Sometimes, and this is the hardest thing to accept, it's just not that important. The brain, with all its ancient wiring and survival programming, made it bigger than it was. So the next time we feel that weight in the chest, that familiar pull back into a conversation that's already over, maybe the most useful thing isn't to analyze it harder or to shame ourselves for doing it at all. Maybe it's simply to recognize what's actually happening. A brain trying to find safety. A nervous system still scanning for danger in a room that stopped being dangerous a long time ago. A part of us that learned, early, quietly, without anyone explaining it, that paying close attention kept us okay. The brain isn't broken. It's loyal. Loyal to a version of us that once genuinely needed that protection. The conversation is over. And slowly, gently, we're learning to let the brain know